Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the council. Before we start the usual proceedings, I'm sure you will have heard of the sad death of former councillor David James Harrison. We will now observe a minute's silence. Would any members like to say a few words? Councillor Foster.
James, obviously, to most members of and every member nearly of the Labour family, was known as Don, and he was a good man. He was a councillor on this council before I was, but I met him numerous times, and I remember in recent elections just a few years ago knocking on his door, and he hadn't, other than more elderly than I remember him being, he hadn't changed his views. He was a staunch socialist, a staunch union man, and he stood for what he believed, Mayor, and those views never ever changed. I'd called on a friend, I spoke to him quite often, and we do send his best regards, and may he rest in peace. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to say anything? Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I personally didn't know Councillor Harrison, but I know some of the members of my group did. But at this sad time, we send our sincere condolences to his family and friends with the sad news of his passing.
Thank you. Councillor Howarth. We will try and sort it, unfortunately. Thank you, Councillor Howarth. Is there anybody else wants to say anything? In which case, I will move on. I'd like to start with some domestic arrangements for the meeting. Due to the regulations surrounding voting, only those members physically present are able to vote. Mobile devices, please ensure that all electronic equipment is either on silent mode or switched off. There are no planned fire alarms, so if one does sound, please leave via the nearest emergency exit. The meeting is being live streamed during open sessions for members of the public to watch. If you would like to speak, please press your microphone to let me know. When I invite you to speak, your microphone will turn red. Please do not obstruct your mouth to ensure that anyone lip reading can do so. If anyone has any issues, please let Democratic Services know. Some points on procedure for members. Members asking a question have a minimum of 3 minutes and may ask one supplementary. Did I not say maximum? I said
minimum.
I do apologise. That would take a while, wouldn't it? Have a maximum of 3 minutes and may ask one supplementary question directly related to the original question for not more than 2 minutes. A member who has spoken once on a motion may not speak again whilst it is being debated except in specific circumstances. Also, individual members of the public will be restricted to speaking for a total of 5 minutes during the whole meeting. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, from Councillor Lillis, Councillor Bretherton and Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much.
As well.
Okay, that will be put down. Thank you very much. Members are reminded of their responsibilities to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Okay, then we move on. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting. This item is for decision. Can I please ask the leader of the council, Councillor Foster, to propose that the minutes be approved?
Mr. Mayor.
Is this seconded?
Seconded.
Are there any questions on points of accuracy? In that case, I'll move straight to the vote. For, against, or abstentions, please press your buttons now. Are we getting there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That is clearly carried, so we will now move on. Thank you. Number 4, Mayor's announcement. Good evening, everyone. That's me. I'm holding my first fundraising event of the year. This will be a quiz night on Friday evening. You should have all received the information from my secretary, and there's still time to book on if you wish. The quiz night will take place here at the Civic Centre at 7 for 7:30. If you wish to attend, please contact Louise as soon as possible. I would also like to inform you of the date for the Christmas banquet, which is to be held as normal on the first Friday in December, which is December the 1st. You should have all received and saved the date, and I would love to see you, as many as possible there. Since the last council meeting, yes, I have been busy as any other mayor has been previously. I'm not going to go through, but some of the highlights were meeting the children on the summer half scheme. The Dementia Charter event, as you know, we are a dementia-friendly visit. The second birthday of the food larder as well. What else? Just pulling something out. The summer barbecue with the veterans was absolutely fantastic. Had a lovely time. And we had to hobnob with the High Sheriff last week, which again was very nice. I would also like to thank the Deputy Mayor for standing in for me at a number of engagements. I know been busy on a couple of days, and I thank him for that. It's appreciated. Also, there is a 2-day climate change event being held at the Civic Centre on Friday the 29th of September and Saturday the 30th. The Friday is the business event and the Saturday open to members of the public. Members of the council are welcome to join the event on either or both days. Thank you. Moving on, item 5. This is for noting. What is for noting? The Cabinet report. Can I ask the Leader of the Council, Paul Foster, to present the report to the meeting held on the 13th of September?
Thank you, Mayor. As you say, the meeting of the Cabinet was held on the 13th of September 2023, and colleagues and I discussed and reviewed the South Ribble Q1 Performance Monitoring Report for 2023-24. We then went and reviewed the Capital and Balance Sheet Monitoring Report for Q1, the Revenue Budget Monitoring Report for Q1, and the Credit Union Progress Update. It was a good discussion, and I also thank the Councillor Will Adams and his scrutiny committee for the scrutiny and feedback that they provided the Cabinet, where we adopted all the recommendations of the committee. So thank you. And my colleagues and I, Mayor, are available for any questions any members may have on the Cabinet meeting, and I recommend that Council note this report. Thank you.
Is this seconded?
Seconded.
Are there any questions from any members of the Council? Councillor David Howarth.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to rise to welcome the report on the progress update for the credit union. Having spent the first 18 years of my working life working for a mutual society before the unfortunate decision to go down the public limited company route, which led to the demise of most of them that did, if not all of them. It is a very much welcome facility for local residents. However, it is based in Leyland, and I would ask that sooner rather than later we do have satellite sessions out in the rest of the borough, and particularly because myself and my colleagues in Hurricane Priory have 2 or 3 days ago just received an email from the Clever Money Credit Union, who are the Blackpool Filed and Wire Credit Union, offering their services in Hurricane Priory and near the northern end of the borough. So I would far rather support our own credit union and get them out helping our residents than have somebody from across the river move in. So satellite sessions as soon as possible will be most welcome.
Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Councillor Howarth. It was, you're very correct. It's something we've been looking at for some time now. And Councillor Alty, when we debated this in Cabinet, and I think it was also mentioned at the Scrutiny Committee, that some community hub chairs have already met with the credit union, and I know others are, and I know Councillor Will Adams in particular is looking to take the credit union to Penwitham. And what we're looking at now is how we will take that mobile facility, whether we need a facility, whether we can use the venue, whether we can use other facilities that are publicly owned around the borough. But it's a valid point and something that we are looking to roll out in every area of the borough as quickly as we can. Thank you.
I can't see any other councillors wanting to ask a question. Are there any questions from members of the public? Okay, we're now at the end of the discussion on this. Please can we note the report? Item 6, urgent discussion decisions has been withdrawn as there hasn't been any. Governance Committee, this item's for noting. Please can I ask the Chair of the Governance Committee, Councillor Sharples, to present the report to the meeting held on the 8th of August.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did enjoy another excellent meeting, well attended and well debated. I'm not going to go through all the items that are in it, simply because I don't want to spoil the excitement that you're building already, because I know you want to read it, Mr. Mayor. But I do like to thank everybody that attended and for their contributions, and officers in particular for some excellent reports on their attendance. Thank you.
Is this seconded? Okay, are there any questions from any members of the council? I can't see any. Are there any questions from members of the public? No. We're now at the end of the discussion on this item. Please can we note the report? Item 8, Corporate Performance and Budget Scrutiny Committee. This item is for noting. Can I please ask the Chair of Corporate Performance and Budget Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Adams, to present the report of the meeting held on the 11th of September.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously the minutes are in the pack, and I'd like to propose that to the council. I'm happy to take any questions should there be any. Thank you.
Okay. Is this seconded? Thank you very much, Councillor Green. Are there any questions from members of the council? No, I can't see any. Are there any questions from members of the public? No. We're now at the end of the discussion on this item. Please, can we note the report? Item 9, South Ribble Annual Report. This item is for noting. Can I please ask the Leader of the Council, Councillor Foster, to present the report?
Thanks, Mayor. This is something that always gives me privilege to present to Council every year, and it basically is an out-facing document to our community and our key stakeholders on the work that this authority undertakes on behalf of its community. And over the last 12 months, we have delivered against our corporate priorities, colleagues, bringing extensive positive outcomes which have allowed us to respond to challenges and meet the needs of all of our community. We have promoted positive recovery from the pandemic while delivering major initiatives for the residents of South Ribble. We invested, as many of you will be aware, £2.8 million to refurbish and open Weldon Hall, hosted Music in the Park in 2023, and delivered affordable homes at Mackenzie Arms, the first in a generation, Mr. Mayor. We've also secured major investment in our town centres of Penwortham and Leyland. We've continued our support for residents and businesses during the cost of living crisis, and we'll continue to offer support and advice through the South Ribble Together Hub, our cost of living action plan, and our holiday hunger initiatives. For the upcoming year, Mr. Mayor, we're in the process of refreshing our corporate strategy and plan, and residents will benefit from greater collaboration and engagement through our local community hubs. More affordable and fit for purpose housing will be delivered, more events and activities for families, and initiatives to support our continued economic growth. We are excited, Mayor, to continue delivering more for South Ribble, supporting our residents, our community groups, and our businesses, allowing them all to flourish. And if members look in the report, you can look at some of the key achievements that we have made in just one calendar year. We answer an average 2,000 calls a week. We recycle 334 tonnes of waste every week. We deliver approximately £15,000 of disabled facility grants every week. We process around 88 planning applications every month. We receive about 626 requests each week via our online portal. We planted, on average, 550 trees every week. We prevented 15 people each month from potentially becoming homeless. We received over 3,700 unique visits to our website every single week. We provide support to over 200 businesses, Mayor. We delivered 2,500 active health sessions. We provided 15,000 places for our young children on our HAF programme and activities. We supported 2,000 families, 1,500 pensioners, and 444 individuals through our household support fund. We provided £250,000 in leisure local community fund grants. We awarded just under £300,000 to our community through our Boost Fund packages. And we supported 607 families with school uniform swaps. Mr. Mayor, we did that without raising council tax for 3 years. I commend this report to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Is this seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the council? Nope. Are there any questions from members of the public? No. Recommendation to consider and note the report then. Thank you. Item 10 is music on the park. This item is for decision. Can I please ask the leader of the council, Councillor Foster, to present the report?
Thanks, Mayor, and another really good news story for the borough and the region. And so just quickly, before I speak more widely, I just want to point out the recommendations that Council's been asked to consider tonight. We've been asked to allocate £150,000 from our COVID recovery reserve to cover the costs of the Music in the Park 2024. We've been asked to agree the waiver of contract procedure rules for the event partner UK Media and Events for next year, 2024, and then to delegate the decision of a further contract award for that service from 2025 to 27 to myself, following a procurement exercise through the authority. Councillors, the Music in the Park was an initiative brought in on with the previous administration where we said we needed to bring big events to our big facilities. And no member here can possibly deny that the Music in the Park over the last 2 years has been an overwhelming success. It's really, really important that we start staging in South Ribble as part of our COVID recovery, big regional events. It's also really important for all members to understand, having read the report, that the council taxpayers, Mayor, in South Ribble do not subsidise this event in any way. The government awarded us, as part of the COVID recovery grant. That is a grant to support the community and businesses post-COVID. This music festival does both. Anybody that goes on the park and sees 3,200 people, I think it was, having a really, really, really good time for a day is part of that COVID recovery. Anyone that goes into Leyland or Penwitham or Bamber Bridge and sees how busy the whole borough is that whole weekend with so many people visiting, see how that is aiding our business recovery. You'll see within the report, I think the net cost of this year's event to the authority was £169,000. However, the government have supported us in calculating how much revenue and income our local businesses receive from that one event on the Sunday, and that is to the tune of £200,000. So just putting the community to one side for a second, businesses benefited hugely from the investment, the COVID recovery grant. We get so much positive feedback around this event. It's starting now to become a regional event, Mayor. The plan is, and you'll see from the report, that this has to be self-sufficient in the next 2 years. So the COVID recovery grant will cover the costs for next year, and then we are targeting the year after that it then becomes cost neutral. These, and hopefully thereafter, is turning in a revenue stream for this authority. All members will be aware these events need seeding and they need to grow bigger. And we noticed with the success of last year's event led to better acts and over 1,000 more people coming to the event this year. And that will happen next year and the year after. You only need to look at the other in Lytham and the huge success of that event. That started as small as this did. Ladies and gentlemen, I must reiterate, the council taxpayer does not pay for this event. It's from the COVID recovery fund, from the grant we were awarded by government, and we're using it for exactly the purposes it was set for. And I commend the recommendations to council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Is this seconded? Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the council? And I will start with Councillor David Howarth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say, Councillor Foster, I really admire the way you could stand up and promote that with a straight face. It was incredible. Can I say at the outset, I'm not against holding a Music in the Park event, just not like this. When the Deputy Leader reported to scrutiny on the Q1 monitoring report, we were presented with a document under Thriving Communities, where Music in the Park was heralded as an achievement and a successful event, promoting a sense of belonging, boosting the local economy and encourage visitors from across the region. But what nobody could or would tell us was at what cost. In what world is an event at half the capacity in which you double the year-on-year losses? It's not a cost, it's a loss. A great success and achievement. Where in South Ribble Matters, where you state that you held your Music in the Park event, where the whole place was bouncing and the feedback was hugely positive, so we're going to do it again in 2023, did it say, even though we lost £80,000 of your money? Where in your South Ribble Matters does it say, vote Labour to blow another 170 grand of your money this year? As a number of people may be aware, I've been attending festival, gigs, music events, scooter and bike rallies for the best part of my life, having been to most of the major festivals both in this country and across Europe, as well as much smaller events, and I've plenty to compare this to. I'm fully aware of the riders that bands put into their contracts, which is commonplace, and that there is usually a guest list. But I can safely say I've never known a guest list have 448 people on it to the tune of nearly £20,000 worth of tickets. Surely you start out by determining the itemised costs and then price the tickets for the number you need to sell. If that number in no way covers your costs or is prohibitive, you cut elements out and you look to reduce the outgoings. What you don't do is make it, and I quote, even bigger and better, greatly increasing the risk and the scope for increased losses. Risk reliant, as it says in the report, on generating significant ticket sales. But of course, the only people taking the risk are the council taxpayers, or if you like, the income taxpayers of this borough, who are footing the bill, whilst our supposed event partner is benefiting to the tune of £50,000 worth of profit. We actually spent £23,000 on marketing. A quarter of our income from ticket sales was spent on trying to get people to buy them. In what world does that make any sense? What market research has been carried out on what our residents actually want to see, given that they're footing the bill? I'm presuming that we're being told by this event partner that 80s cheesy pop is what everybody's going to turn up to. But tasty music is highly subjective. By all means, book headline acts. But then why are we not giving a platform to local talent as opening acts? At Penworth and Gala, we've promoted an up-and-coming local band. And we have a School of Performing Arts at Runshaw. That would cut costs and do far more to present a sense of belonging within our local community. There isn't a simple choice of do it like this or not at all. We can still do this far more cost effectively with more realistic pricing on a commercial footing. As for the claims of how many people attended, you simply don't know. Or if you do, nobody is telling us.
Councillor Howarth, you've gone well over.
Okay.
Sorry, you've almost gone a minute over time. I'm sure the other members of your group will be able to finish off for you. Councillor Will King.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to echo very much what Councillor Howarth has said. I think, Councillor Foster, you're a great talker, but no matter how many times you say this is a great success, doesn't make it the case. This group does love the idea of music in the park and actually does support the council's aims of trying to find other ways of generating revenue. However, when we've looked at the report that was put forward, the numbers in this are pretty dismal. This year, the council have managed to burn through £169,000 of taxpayers' money, and the previous event, a similar sort of story. We have seen no plan of how you're planning to make this more profitable. You've provided no details of how this 196k boost to the local economy have been conjured up. And when Councillor Howarth and I actually asked the Deputy Leader, we found out that this number isn't actually reflective of South Ribble itself. Whilst this is a money pit, then we can't seriously agree to signing up to this all the way to 2027. If you've not shown competency so far, how can we agree to put on the money that far? So as a result, our group are putting forward an amendment from the back of this.
Yeah, I know. Right, so we have an amendment. It's just come through. Is this right? Okay. This is a Conservative group amendment to item 10. Yeah. Remove recommendation 4 and replace it with the following. To agree to request a further report be presented to Council to consider whether the event should continue in 2025, and if so, to consider how the contract for the event is procured and the level of budget required from Council resources. Yeah, absolutely. So that was proposed by Will King. Do we have a seconder for that?
Mr. Mayor, I will second the amendment and reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are open for debate on the amendment. Well, that's the old one. So that needs to come off, surely.
Well, you need to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. So who wishes to speak on this amendment? Surely. Just Councillor Paul Foster at the moment.
I take it Councillor Howarth won't be attending next year, which is up to him. The Councillor King, the Conservative group needs to understand what they're voting for and read the paper properly, because annually a budget is set, Mayor, annually. So Council's been asked to vote tonight to support the Moose in the Park next year, but then waiving contract procedure rules to use UK media and events. And by the way, Councillor Howarth, you made a public statement that they pocketed £50,000, and if you look at the numbers in the report, it's 15,000. And then what happens is we undertake a procurement exercise. So after next year's event, when we decide to continue with it, we have to bring a paper here to seek approval for the budget. And then we already have UK media events on standby because they've won the procurement exercise, who will then deliver it. But the only Music in the Park event that is being approved through this paper, I think it's quite clear, is next year's. So we see no reason whatsoever, Mr. Mayor, to accept the amendment, and I'd ask us to go straight to the vote on the amendment so that we can debate the substantive issue that's been raised.
And the point of order is?
A point of personal explanation. I'd just like to come back on Councillor Foster.
I am allowing that, Councillor.
Thank you.
Howard.
I would just like to come back on Councillor Foster's statement. I didn't say anybody had pocketed anything. I said the company had benefited to the tune of £50,000. £15,000 of which was one element, and £35,000 of which came from the bar sales. That totals £50,000.
Thank you. Right, so it is the way I would consider it. We now need to have a vote on whether we move to the vote, because it has been seconded with it. So we do need to vote on Councillor Foster's motion and Councillor Tomlinson's second that we move to the vote, but we do need to have a vote to say whether we need to move to the vote. So I am going to ask you to vote for, against or abstain on whether we move to the vote. Thank you. Please press your buttons now. That is clearly carried. We move to the vote. So the vote is on the amendment of Councillor Will King. It is Will, it's not William, is it? Thank you. Councillor Will King. Do you want me to read it out again, or do you just want me to move? Okay, I will read it out again. Remove a recommendation 4 to replace it with the following. To agree to the request, a further report be presented to Council to consider whether the event should continue in 2025, and if so, to consider how the contract for the event is procured and the level of budget required from Council resources. If you agree with that, it's 4. If you disagree, it's against, and the abstain button is there if you need it. Thank you. Please press your buttons now. That is obviously against, so we move back to music in the park. So we move back to the request. I've got 4 people down. Councillor Green, Michael Green was first in. Councillor Green.
Probably wasn't actually, Mr. Mayor, because I wanted to speak on the amendment, but we've been denied that opportunity. But why we're not surprised, Mr. Mayor? It's not that we're against this in principle. I think Councillor Foster takes the wrong view. I would echo some of the concerns which have been eloquently expressed by Councillor Howarth this evening, and this event has got to balance the costs ultimately moving forward. This is a cost, however we wrap it up, it is a cost to the taxpayers in South Ribble, maybe not through council tax, but through the income tax and other taxes that people pay. So it is a tax one way or another, and local residents and beyond are paying for this event. Now, it might need to be a loss leader initially, accepting that principle, but moving forwards, we need to see this moving in the right direction. The point I would ask some clarification from the leader on, he said that a report will come back and we'd have to consider it after next year's event, but the report makes clear reference that if we are going to run this event from 2025 onwards, it will be considered as part of the budgetary process for 2024-25. So a decision in terms of the budget would have to be set before then. So some clarification on that would be helpful. Do support the event running next year. It's beyond that we need to ask questions. I think all of us would have some concerns. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ange Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Where I'm up at on this is, in order for me to make an informed decision and have confidence to vote for the further release of £150,000 of council taxpayers' money, which I have had confirmed today by the Finance Department. It is not COVID grant from the government. It is council taxpayers' money, and I have that in writing from the Finance Department. So there's misinformation galore here. I need a detailed financial breakdown of the figures provided for 2023 as reported at page 45 of the item presented to us tonight. So, I've spent some time reviewing the Council's expenditure figures available on the South Ribble Borough Council website in order to attempt to bridge back to the 271 expenditure and the income of 102,000. This was difficult to do as the Council's expenditure costs on the website are across monthly reports, and you have to make a judgment on the description provided in these reports to tally them up with the Music in the Park 2023. So I put a spreadsheet together and then sought the help of officers to seek clarification and understanding of the breakdown of expenditure and income of my findings. Frankly, this is something that I should not have to do. And in order to truly understand how this project was delivered, all councillors in this chamber should have received a complete financial breakdown account of this project in order to facilitate an informed debate and decision. In fact, this project should have been scrutinised by this council in order to seek and understanding and recommendations. I can report some key notes from my findings as follows. Let's talk about the expenditure. Both UK Media Events and South Ribble are clearly the main contractors to deliver this project. My findings reveal that a purchase order of 205,000 was placed on UK Media Events with approximately £65,000 that I will call direct costs expenditure incurred by this council. However, we have no breakdown of this expenditure by the council, so for me, there is no certainty that this is all the costs incurred. So you can imagine my shock when I discovered that UK Media Events made a profit of £50,000, and I'll help you with the clarity on this one. £15,000 approximately profit from the purchase order, and a further £35,000.
Councillor Turner, can I ask you to start winding up, please?
Stop. Okay, I didn't know it was 5 minutes. I thought I had 5 minutes.
It's 3 minutes.
I'm talking to the debate. It's 5 minutes. Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you. Yeah, carry on. Do carry on and I'll add it up.
So you can imagine my shock when I discovered that UK Media Events made a profit of 50,000 and South Ribble Borough Council made a loss of 169,000. This does not seem right, and I would strongly question this current contracting model and ticket price strategy. Now I wish to turn your attention to income. I've worked out the following breakdown of income in order to elucidate for my fellow councillors. 96k in ticket sales. Well, actually, the values presented to me from the finance department only amounted to 93.5, but let's call it 96. Trader pitches, 3,000, and a contribution from the bar being run by UK Media Events of 3,500, which is roughly 10% of the profit that they made on the bar of 35,000, which takes you back to the 50k profit. If we go back to expenditure of costs incurred by the council, we spent, and these figures have been provided to me by the finance department, we spent £23,000, that's the council, on marketing. That's 25% of income of the ticket sales to persuade people to buy the tickets in the first place. It's good to look at historical financial trends, which can also be taken into consideration to inform decisions, and this has already been made by Councillor Will King, and he's right. The first year we lost 80,000. The second year we slightly doubled that by a loss of 169,000. We've got the expenditure estimated to be 315,000, and income of 184,000, with a loss of 116,000 for 2024. Do I have confidence in these estimates for 24? No. I'm not against holding such events, but the opportunity to scrutinise and review the contracting model should have been afforded to this chamber before rushing through
I've now been more than generous
for the next year. I believe we should postpone this until everyone's seen financial breakdown and we can review it and
Thank you.
discuss. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And apologies to you to stopping you in mid-floor. Councillor Harry Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to take issue with a number of claims in this report and a number of aspects in relation to where the tickets went. We are told that based on a survey, feeding the results into a government calculation tool, the event contributed an estimated £196,200 boost to the economy. Really? To start with, the number of people who filled in the survey was 243 from a possible attendance of 3,664. If everyone with a ticket actually attended, something we don't know. From tickets sold, that is only 7.5% on which the claims are based. If every one of those ticket holders attended, which we know they didn't, that means every person spent between £53.55p and £60 to arrive at that figure, which I would suggest is far-fetched and speculative. Some of those ticket holders were school children. When we talk about the local economy, where are we talking about? Certainly not the local economy in my area of Penwitham, or Longton, or Samlesbury, or Waltley Dale, or Lostock Hall, but those residents are subsidising this event. As for the tickets, 448 complimentary tickets. Where did those go? Apparently, they were distributed to sponsors of Lely Festival, volunteers supporting the event, people associated with the acts, people working at the event, competition winners, and school children. Why are we giving tickets to sponsors of the Leyland Festival, which is not a council event, or volunteers at the event? Where are the tickets for volunteers at Penwitham Gala, Longton Fete, Rexon Lane Fair, Lostock Hall Carnival, or their sponsors? Community cohesion and promoting a sense of belonging appears to be very selective. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hancock. Councillor David Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. You can see we've obviously had some conversations about this in group. Councillor Howarth wished me to finish his speech. I don't have his delivery, but you'll have to just take it from me. You don't know that visitors were largely from South Ribble, Chorley and Preston areas because he has asked for a breakdown of ticket sales by postcode area and the figures aren't available. What he has been given is a map of the country showing how far and wide ticket sales took place, and it is possible to contend that the vast majority of council taxpayers in this borough are subsidising an event for attendees who don't live here. Claims of benefit to the local community, by which of course we mean Leyland, not the rest of the borough, are potentially spurious and hearsay. So this is a model that we could say is difficult to support. We've already had an amendment which unfortunately has failed. I wanted to ask, with regard to the recommendations, there is always with these reports other options considered and rejected. It's therefore possible to see that the second recommendation is to agree the waiver of contract procedure rules for the event partner for 2024. That is explained as being due to timing. We need to move it forward, and therefore that I think we're agreed. We can see the logic to. What I haven't seen is an explanation of why we have to delegate the decision to award the contract value for 25-27 to the leader of the council. There must be alternative ways for that to be brought before the council and for a wider range of decision making on that. And I'd like clarification on that, please.
Okay, thank you. I have no one else requesting to speak, so I've just got Councillor Pete Pillinger to come in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the volunteers, I volunteer for a music festival near Banbury that runs over 3 days. I was part of a team that put 50 miles of white lines across fields for campers. I got a AAA pass for doing so, as did several, well, I think on the Scout side, 115 Scouts got passes, and there was a second crew team as well for that festival. We all got free passes, and a good number of us got free food as well.
Thank you. We now have no one else requesting to speak, so we'll let Councillor Foster answer before we move to the vote.
Right, thank you, Mayor. There's a number of points that have been raised there, some relevant, some not so relevant. So as Councillor Pillinger said, Mayor, and it's in direct challenge to the Liberal Democrat group, about the volunteers that we give tickets to. Leyland Festival, one of the best festivals in Lancashire. There's numerous volunteers that give up their time. There's a festival this weekend, I think, at Taste of Leyland. There's a Penwortham Gala. There's the Penwortham. There's Longton Live. There's numerous activities take place around this borough, and I feel it's appropriate that we reward those volunteers who don't get paid, Mayor, with tickets. We also give free tickets to teachers in Longton, in Farrington, in Hutton, in Penwortham, in Lostock Hall, in Leyland, in Bamber Bridge, because we value the work that our teachers do. So we give them a ticket and encourage them to come along, Mayor. Councillor Turner's factually incorrect in some of her statements she's made and doesn't understand the difference between gross expenditure and profit, Mayor. The report states the purchase orders, the gross expenditure. So taking on face value, I can't remember the figure that you stated, Councillor Turner, £35,000, I think, on bar takings, that beer has to be paid for first. It's not all profit. So the £15,000, all the detail is there. These are purchase order values. So the items like a stage, fencing, security staff, tickets, can all be produced. It's gross expenditure. I'd say to Councillor Hancock, and the other thing I'd say to the Dem group as well, you're perfectly happy to support the music in the park when you were our partners, and now you're not our partners, you're no longer willing to support it, which is quite ironic, isn't it? So there's the marketing. I'm proud that we market the music in the park all around Lancashire, because it's not just the music in the park that's been advertised, it's South Ribble. It's South Ribble. And that's part of a strategy and a policy that this council has adopted about marketing South Ribble. There was other comments made regarding the boost to the economy. These are not figures that are just made up. These are figures using the government's tool to calculate how much revenue that festival created for our local businesses. They're not just made up, we use a government tool. I would suggest an 8% return on the number of, on the feedback is actually quite good. If you look at some of the consultations we do, we get 0.1, 0.2 or 1% consultation response. On this, we received 8%. As for the allegations that basically the chief finance officer has made false allegations in the paper in front of us, Councillor Turner, I find that astonishing, and I'm going to read what you said, Councillor Turner, that this money was coming from the revenue budget, not from a COVID reserve. I'm going to read out the comments of the statutory finance officer in the paper, which you've all hopefully read. The estimated net cost of the event proposed for 24-25 is £116,000. However, a budget is requested of £150,000 to include an element of contingency. It is proposed to fund this from the COVID Recovery Reserve, which currently stands at £280,000. What we could do, councillors, we could do nothing if you wanted. We could cut the grass in Longton. We could stop supporting Longton Live. We could stop supporting Pemberton Live. We could stop supporting Lostock Hall Carnival. We could stop supporting all the events that this council puts on. But why would we do that? Why would we do that? We have a grant from government to support our businesses and support our community. Members don't have to attend the festival. They don't have to buy the tickets if they don't want to buy the tickets. That's entirely up to you. But this is an appropriate use of the COVID Recovery Reserve. It is the appropriate use of encouraging businesses in our towns and centres to recover. It's an appropriate use of resources, to help the entire borough of South recover. And I urge council support. I have one important point to raise, which was regarding delegating the procurement exercise to myself as the leader of the council. Once again, councillors will be aware that that happens quite often, that either the leader or a cabinet member is delegated authority at the end of a procurement exercise. However, Mayor, we can change this. This can come to cabinet for approval if people don't trust me. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to a close on that debate. So please get ready. And the point of order is? Sorry? A point of personal explanation.
Yeah.
Yes, I will take that.
All the figures that I have got here, and I'm going to focus on this claim of this COVID recovery monies that's being drawn down, so that you kind of like batting away the fact that it is actually council taxpayers' money. I am thorough with what I do with these figures. I rang the finance department and I double checked with the person I spoke to and said, are you absolutely sure that this is not the COVID recovery fund, but council taxpayers' money? It's an underspend of a budget of money from council taxpayers' income. So I totally disagree. And if we'd been provided with the financial breakdown of the 2023 Music in the Park, you won't be having all these challenges now. So there's been no transparency.
The explanation has been done. I do have a question for Councillor Foster, though. Are you going to change the report to say it will come to cabinet, or are you going to take responsibility solely?
Mayor, do you know what? I will do this as an EMD, as is my duty. Thank you.
Okay. I've been informed that we can just move to the vote then, in which case it's for or against or abstain. Please use your voting tools now. That is clearly carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on to item 11, committee appointments. This item is for decision. Can I ask the leader of the council, Councillor Foster, to present the report?
Thanks, Mayor. Hopefully this is relatively straightforward. It's noted down within the recommendations for Councillor Matthew Tomlinson to become a member of the Shared Services Joint Committee Appointments Panel, with Councillor Watkinson becoming a reserve, Councillor Watkinson to become a member of the Shared Services Joint Committee, with myself becoming a reserve, Mayor, Councillor Claire Hunt to become a member of the Chorley and South Ribble Partnership Executive in place of myself, and there's some Lib Dem group substitutions, and there's some minor changes just to the titles of two of the portfolios. If I may, Mr. Mayor, as well, something that we have missed, but I'd like council to approve. is we need to move Councillor Jackie Alty onto the Citizens Advice Bureau Board of Trustees, and she will be replacing Councillor James Flannery. Thank you.
Do we need to know the Liberal Democrat group changes, or to approve substitute for the Liberal Democrat group? No, it's in the report. Thank you. Okay, then let's have a look. But yeah, I know, but I'm getting ahead. Right, so is that seconded? Okay. Are there any questions from any members of the council? I'm not getting it. Any members? Questions from the public? No. We're now at the end of the debate on this proposal, so please use your buttons for, against, or abstain. Please vote now. Machine, that's carried. Thank you very much. Item 12, appointment of the independent person. This item is for decision. Please can I ask the Leader of the Council, Councillor Foster, to present the report.
Thanks, Mayor. Under the provisions of the Localism Act 2011, this council is required to appoint at least one independent person, and for a number of years we've had two. The independent person works closely with the monitoring officer in a number of areas, particularly around standards. As you'll note within the report, one of the independent persons who's worked alongside us for a number of years and has unfortunately been busy at times as well, has stepped aside. So it is recommended to Council that for the purposes of Section 28 of the Localism Act 2011, the Council agree to appoint Victoria Tunnicliffe as an independent person. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the council? Nothing coming through. Are there any questions from members of the public? Nothing coming through. We're now at the end of the debate on this proposal. Please get ready to vote for, against, or abstain. Please press your buttons now. Clearly, it's carried. Thank you. Item 13, CCTV. Policy wording. This item is for decision. Please can I ask, well, it's going to be Councillor Paul Wharton-Hardman to present this for Jane Bell, who unfortunately can't be here. Councillor Paul Wharton-Hardman, would you like to propose this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This paper outlines two recommendations to members to consider feedback from consultations which have been made in the public regarding CCTV and to formally change the taxi licensing policy as attached to the report. When seeking the development of mandatory CCTV policy, various factors need to be taken into consideration to ensure that we're legally compliant, and that's proportionality, cost of the service, the incentives and trade buying, and also legal compliance. The Licensing Committee held two consultations in November and March last year and have detailedly gone through these and debated at length involving trade partners and members of the public regarding the implication of CCTV. Whilst there is an appetite for CCTV to be in taxes, there needs to be a justification of the local need required to mandate a policy that comes into force. And our officers have looked at trade statistics, trade buying, public buying, and other investigations that have taken place by the licensing authority. We need to balance between privacy and proportionality, and that's what our officers have done by making these recommendations. There is full details in the report, so I'll not detail any further, but members can ask any questions if they so wish to do so. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is that seconded? Thank you, Harry. Sorry, Councillor Hancock, I do apologise. Okay, are there any questions from any members of the council? Well, I've got Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very, very briefly, members will know that public protection comes under my portfolio. So I've been watching this with interest. I just wanted to thank the members of the committee who've worked so diligently on this and urge the council to support the recommendations which have been formed as a result of the work that the committee have done.
Thank you. Are there any more members of the council who wish to speak on this? No. Are there any questions from any members of the public? No. We're now at the end of the debate on this proposal. Please get ready to vote for, against, or abstain. Please press your buttons now. Clearly, it is carried. Thank you very much. Item 14, Cafe Pavement Licence. This is for decision. Can I, again, Councillor Jane Bell unfortunately can't be with us, so I'm going to ask Councillor Wharton Hardman to speak on this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a statutory requirement of the council under Business and Planning Act 2020. This was brought in during COVID to increase occupancy levels for businesses, restaurants, etc. And this is a statutory requirement that we support this.
I could have said that. Right, is this seconded? Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the council? Nope. Are there any questions from members of the public? Nope. We move straight to the vote on this proposal. The debate's at the end. So please get ready to press your buttons for, against, or abstain, and please press your buttons now. Clearly carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Item 15, electric vehicle charging points. This is for decision. Can I please ask the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhoods and Waste Services, Councillor Ashton, to present the report?
Thank you, Mayor. I will be brief. This is essentially a procedural matter. So as all members of council know, and we did discuss it at some length at the last meeting, the council is committed to the green agenda, and as part of that we've got a goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2030 as a council. When I made these notes earlier today, it was the current national policy of ending the sale of new petrol and diesel vehicles by 2030, but I note on the BBC News that has now been put back, so it's actually 2035. But our target remains the same. We also have a target of installing 200 electric vehicle charging points across the borough. So we have been successful again in terms of obtaining some external capital funding, which will cover 60% of the total cost of the scheme, leaving a 40% shortfall. So the proposal is that we enter into a contract with Connected Curb Limited, who will install the charging points on our behalf, and this will be at no cost to us. And ultimately, if there is any income, we would get a 10% of the income generated, but with no liability if they're not generating a profit. So the main reason it's here is because of the need to create the new capital budget of £155,000, even though on one level that's a technicality because the money is actually coming from central government and from Connected Curb. So I would, the other thing I should have said, is that it is about on-street residential charging points, and there is a table on page 110 which sets out the sites where the proposed charging points will go. So I'm happy to, I commend the report to the council. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this seconded?
Oh, seconded, sorry, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the council? Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we welcome these recommendations and the successful granting funding of over £154,000 towards the provision of the charging points. We welcome them, as we do need more charging points as more people get buy electric vehicles in the borough. But I hope the charging points will be installed, and where they are installed, the electric connections will be able to be installed properly, unlike the ones at the Hope Terrace car park in Loster Call, so that they can be used as soon as they are installed. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Paul Foster.
Thanks, Matt. I'll just explain why I was bumping my gums there before I seconded the report. I'm astonished, Mayor, with the announcement that's come from Downing Street today, because if you read through this report, it makes reference to the 2030 pledge for the end of new petrol and diesel vehicles, and that's why the government has been expending tens, if not hundreds of millions of pounds worth of taxpayers' money in awarding us these grants, so we could achieve this 2030 target, which we've now withdrawn today. I just find it absolutely astonishing, and somehow, Mayor, I don't think we've heard the last of this nationally, because there's no way I can see the government drawing back its pledges with climate. You can all see how that government decision today is going to impact on local authorities up and down the country. Thanks, Mayor.
Oops, I have no one else wishing to speak on this. Do we have any members of the public? Councillor Forrest. No, he's not.
No, Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't answer to councillor now, but I certainly would answer to lefty lawyer. I'm not sure a proud possessor, but a possessor of an electric vehicle, and as such travel at quite long distances in the past around the country. There is considerable provision, possibilities for Leyland, where we are close to the motorway, to provide rapid charging facilities for people travelling long distances, provided that we install CCS chargers with contactless payment and rapid charges, of course. What we seem to be providing here is particularly facilities for residents. I'm not sure whether if I were a resident I would want to take my car to a car park to try and charge it. I would have thought more provision should be made for actually charging from your house, and there was a picture in the report of one coming from a lamppost. My question really is, are we considering the long-term use of more rapid chargers to provide facilities for people travelling down the motorway, and from which we could make considerable amounts of money, I think?
Do you want to reply to that or take it as a written?
I can just picking up on Mr. Forrest's points, the two of them, the issue about them being, this particular fund is for people who don't have off-street parking, who don't have charging facilities, available in their own homes, and there are a large number of properties in the borough who fall into that category, perhaps in terraced housing and things. So the aim is to put these on car parks that are very close to where people live. So that's what this particular round of funding is all about. In terms of the other point that Mr. Forrest makes, I can't say we have thought about that in terms of an income generating opportunity at this point in time. We can consider it, but of course a lot is going to depend on national government policy on this whole area. And then just picking up on the point that Councillor Walton made about the frustrations about getting these the ones we've got connected up to the grid, that is truly an ongoing frustration. And it was one of the things that I asked the officers about when they were briefing me on this paper, because it does say that the grant is contingent on them being activated, installed and activated. And I was told, I don't think it's a good thing, but it's a pragmatic thing, that the grant funding agency is aware that this is an issue nationally, and so they are highly unlikely to enforce that condition. Thank you.
Thank you. I've no more requests for members of the public to speak, so we're now at the end of the discussion on this item, so please get ready to vote for, against or abstain. Please press your buttons now. Clearly carried. Thank you very much indeed. Item 16, Leisure Company additional support. This item is for decision. Can I please ask the Cabinet Member for Communities, Leisure and Wellbeing, Councillor Hunter, to present the report? I do apologise, I'm following my script. Councillor Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologise for stealing Councillor Hunter's thunder. I'm sure she'd love to be standing up asking Council for another £800,000. Members will be acutely aware of the pressure that leisure services right across the country are currently under. Only yesterday, Kirklees Council, not that very far from here, announced that as part of a cost-saving exercise, they are now proposing to close their 3 leisure pools. We're not proposing to close any of our pools, but the cost of utilities continues to put really an unprecedented pressure on leisure services everywhere. The other cost that our leisure company is facing at the moment is, again, the government is suggesting that all members of local government staff get a £1,925, I think it is, flat rate wage increase, which is good news for our staff, but they're not giving us any money to fund that, so we have to find that from within existing resources. South Ribble Leisure Limited is an arm's length company which has no cash reserves. It's funded by the council, and if we are to commit to keeping our leisure centres open, and I'm standing here to say we are committed to keeping our leisure centres open, then we have to provide them with the funds to do so. Members who were here before May will remember at the budget meeting in February, we established an inflationary protection reserve of some £1.5 million that we said we needed to keep just to cover us for the continuing costs of inflation. And here we are, just showing how right we were to put that money to one side. People who were here for the debate will remember and recall, of course, that the Conservatives wanted to spend a hefty chunk of that reserve on bins, benches and bus stops. This is exactly why we voted that proposal down. Exactly why we knew that this was likely to come forward. And thank goodness we planned and prepared for it, because here we are with a real challenge. It's quite clear that this is not sustainable in the long term. Government at the moment are proposing some grants. The complication is they're only paying grants to people who are closing pools. So if you're planning to keep your pools open, you can't apply for the grant. At the moment, we're planning to keep our pools open, but we will apply for the grant, and say if we don't get the grant, we might have to reconsider, and we'll see where that gets us. It does sound very odd, a way to provide grant fundings to councils, but I guess it was ever thus. But the request has been made. I'm proposing that we approve that request, and I would urge all councillors to support that request.
Thank you. Is this seconded?
It's seconded, Mayor, and I reserve the right to speak later. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the council? Councillor David Howarth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think any of us, when we considered bringing leisure back in-house, could have envisaged any of the pressures that were going to be brought to bear. And I commend Councillor Tomlinson and the administration, because credit where credit is due. If anything is important in this borough, it is the health and well-being of our residents. And perhaps the COVID recovery fund might have been better spent here, but that's a ship that's now sailed. So we do support this. We will support this as long as it is feasible and viable to do so, because it is absolutely essential that those who can't afford to go to rather expensive private gyms and facilities have access to good leisure and health facilities, and that's what the council is providing, and we should be proud of it.
Thank you, Councillor Howarth. Is there anybody else wishing to speak on this motion? Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have quite serious concerns over the request from the South Ribble Leisure Limited for financial support again of about £800,000 to fund the increase in energy costs and the pending staff award, which we know it will be coming. The last reported underspend of the Leisure Limited company was in March 2022, and the council approved extra funding of £654,000 in November 2022 to address these similar pressures of funding. Membership of the leisure centres has increased to over 4,000 members at the end of July, but still falls very short of the membership base in 2020 of over 5,500. Is there any business plan in place, as we know, to increase the membership and so increase income? Is there an update available on the refurbishment of the leisure centres to make them attractive places for all our residents to go? Was due diligence carried out when the South Ribble Leisure Company set up to deliver our leisure services to provide for such pressures? The South Ribble Leisure Company would be, for them, not to have sufficient cash flow to continue to operate and result in the closure of the leisure centres is not what we want. Will the South Ribble Leisure Limited request a similar amount in another few months to cover salaries and energy costs or other pressures? The leisure centres provide school swimming lessons, which are part of the national curriculum, and so are an essential service to providing health and wellbeing services for our most vulnerable residents. Has any information been received concerning the Swimming Pool Support Fund, as you've explained, Councillor Tomlinson? But we will be supporting the request for financial assistance on this occasion, but request that there is very much more due diligence in the running of the leisure centres and for future planning or a business plan to increase the membership of the leisure centres and regular updates brought to the council for scrutiny to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walton. I have no one else on my screen. So are there any questions from members of the public? I cannot see anyone. Do you want to write a reply, Councillor Tomlinson? It's up to you.
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, thank you, the Liberal Democrats, for their support. It really is appreciated. As far as Councillor Walton, long list of questions, some of which were rhetorical, some of which I'd already answered, but some of them are valid questions, and it is clearly a worry. It's a worry going forward. No one wants to close our leisure centres. We are committed to keeping them open. There is a refurbishment programme. We budgeted for that. There's been a lot of work done sort of in the back of house. There's front of house. Is there a back of house? But you know, but in the yes, in the engineering side to future proof the leisure centres, a lot of work that needed doing. Some of that has now, quite a lot of that has now been done. What we need to do now is the bits that our customers see. And she's right. We're not back at pre-COVID levels of membership, but that's where we need to get to.
Thank you for that. We're now at the end of the debate on this proposal. Please get ready to vote for, against or abstain. Please press your buttons now. Clearly carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we now move on to item 17. Questions for the leader of the council. Are there any questions from members of the council? Right, Councillor Hayden Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I note with interest the comments made by Catherine Fletcher, the MP for South Ribble, in Parliament earlier this week, where she referred to a temporary increase in funding for Operation Centurion. This is Lancashire Constabulary's initiative to tackle antisocial behaviour in our neighbourhoods, specifically in the area of Leyland. She seemed to be the impression that South Ribble Borough Council were doing nothing to tackle antisocial behaviour and not being engaged with our local police forces, where quite the opposite is true. There are many examples over many years where our Leyland councillors have engaged with the local police officers and other agencies, such as the base, CNOS and others, by promoting anti-knife crime initiatives, engaging with local teachers and schools, and early prevention.
Do move to the question.
Yep. Would the leader agree with me that it's perhaps our MP spent more time in Leyland instead of areas where antisocial behaviour is less of an issue, to see some of this work going on and engage and work positively with the leadership of this council and its members? She would see the multi-layered approach to early intervention this council and individual councillors are doing to prevent this behaviour happening in the first place. Would he further agree?
No, one question, Hayden, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Can we have this? Would you agree with me? This funding needs to be made permanent and more resources to get more than the 2.5 police officers we currently have, and agree that also relying on punitive measures and hitting people with a big stick.
Right. That's it, Hayden. I'm going to have to sit you down, my friend. Could you answer one question, please, Councillor Foster?
Thanks, Mayor. I too was. Thanks for the question, Councillor Williams.
Yeah.
I too was more than surprised to hear the exchange in Parliament yesterday or the day before. Catherine Fletcher has not contacted this authority through the Chief Executive or myself once about antisocial behaviour in South Ribble. And this authority, Mayor, deals with antisocial behaviour every single day of the week. And what I am going to do, regards Operation Centurion and the other initiatives that we're doing, I'm going to arrange for officers to send a note out to all members, and guess what, I might send it to Catherine Fletcher as well, so she understands. We are fully engaged with antisocial behaviour, and there are issues across the borough, but we're doing everything in our power, Mayor, to deal with it. Interestingly, there's 4 tiers of government or public service, Mayor, that are responsible for antisocial behaviour in Lancashire. Lancashire County Council, Conservative run. The Police and Crime Commissioner, Conservative run. The Government, Conservative run. And South Ribble Borough Council, Labour run. So I can't understand why she's selected us for a certain amount of criticism. But what I'd also urge Catherine Fletcher to do is unblock me as leader of the council, engage with me as leader of the council, and put the residents first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I now have a question from Councillor Paul Wharton Hardman. Can we keep it to one question, please?
Of course, Mr. Mayor, thank you. As a council, we've put lots of climate policies forward, and it's been fantastic. Again, another one tonight about electric charging vehicle points. I want to ask the leader of the question, in light of the recent development of the Prime Minister's to retract key climate change policies in an attempt to gain support from the right-wing voters, is this going to affect any of our council policies?
Councillor Paul Foster.
Thanks, but I think, thank you, Councillor Wharton Hardman, for the question. I think, like many of us across the borough, across the country, are aghast at this statement. And I heard someone mention today on the radio, I think it's the first time that Just Stop Oil and the motor industry in the UK have been brought together on an issue, because it's just utterly astonishing what the Prime Minister is proposing. And I remember members of the Conservative group, you were all looking on your phones a couple of months ago, challenging that the government weren't going to retract on their billions of pounds worth of carbon zero, net zero commitments. Do you remember doing that and saying we weren't true in what we were saying? And I actually wrote to the government to challenge this. It is a massive regret what the government are looking to propose. However, what I would say to members is two things. This council is not going to take any step back with our net zero pledges, and we'll continue to do everything we need to do to protect our environment. But second, I'd also say to council, the Parliament hasn't met yet to debate this. And when Parliament comes back, I'm not certain Mr. Sunak will get it through. Let's just see. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kath Unsworth.
That's it. Thanks. It's been brought to my attention as Chair of Standards that there are occasions when councillors are mandating officers to carry out tasks with has the leader any idea how we can make it clear that officers are employed by the council, not individual councillors, and that it follows instructions should only be given through council or committee decisions?
Thanks, Councillor Unsworth. You brought this to my attention. It's quite a concern, and there's a member officer protocol in place, and members shouldn't be behind the scenes trying to get officers to undertake tasks for them and make decisions for them. This council's governance structure is such that they've got the community hubs, we have chairs in place, we have the council, we have the cabinet, we have the planning committee, we have the licensing committee, we have the standards committee, we have numerous corporate functions for decision making. Councillor Unsworth, is wholly irresponsible and unacceptable if members of this council trying to go around the back door to either influence or change decisions of this authority. And I think the particular concern is around community hubs, Mayor. So what I am going to do, Mayor, is ask the monitoring officer to work alongside the chairman of the governance committee and yourself as the chairman of the standards committee to have a look at this jointly, and perhaps we need a refresh of the member officer working protocol. And I would ask Councillor with the standards committee to look at this and bring a report back to council, because it's wholly unacceptable.
Thank you. Councillor David Howarth.
Could I just apologise, first of all, if there are any more Labour planted questions, but I was just going to ask the leader, how's your campaign going to become the next Member of Parliament for South Ribble? And how many more planted questions are we going to have to suffer between now and the actual general election? Yeah. Because the kick-off's at 8 o'clock and we really don't have a lot of time.
Thanks, Councillor Howarth. I did say to my group this evening that I think the council meeting might be over a little bit quicker than usual because of Bayern Munich, Man United. Look, I think all the questions that are being asked around community safety and antisocial behaviour, around climate change and around member standards are very valid questions. But to answer your direct question, how's the campaign going? The campaign's going really well. And just so you know, we're in Howick Priory on Saturday. So see you there.
Councillor Caleb Tomlinson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Further to my question at the last full council meeting to the portfolio holder, was the leader as surprised as I was that the decision on Pickering's Farm has now been put back to November of this year? And does he think the decision will ever be taken under this omnishambles of a government? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor. Again, a very serious issue that Councillor Tomlinson brings up. I hope members all agree. So I have written to the Secretary of State, Mr. Gove, on a couple of occasions now, trying to seek some clarity on what on earth is going on. What we do know is that the Secretary of State's decision has been deferred. I think it's the 20th of November at the earliest. What does concern me, Mayor and colleagues, is they seem to have aligned the Ullans Walton third prison decision and re-inspection alongside Pickering's Farm, and I do not know why they are looking to do that. What I can say, Councillor Tomlinson, is this is having a huge detrimental impact on the Pemberton community, on Councillor Flannery's attempts to get a local plan produced. It is now delaying the local plan. I've explained this to the Secretary of State, Mr. Gove, but we're not getting any feedback. My view is because they will not share the inspector's view on this, because you'll all be aware that there's been an appeal and the inspector has produced his report. That inspection report, Council, was completed over a year ago, but the government will not share it with us. My personal view on this, Mayor, is that clearly the inspector must have supported the views of this planning committee in refusing Pickering's Farm, and the government are now doing everything in their power to try and fudge through the development. I have a view, Mayor, that we may not see this decision this side of a general election, and I think that would be an absolute travesty for the South Ribble and Central Lancashire community. Thank you.
Thank you. I've no one else on my screen, but we do have a question from the member of the public, Derek Forrest, I believe.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apropos of the social behaviour policy and I welcome your getting together with the MP to try and resolve something there. I was quite shocked the other day to hear that two of my ladies having a lunchtime walk along Bannister Brook had come across two men in balaclava helmets beating a third on the.
Can we get to the question, please, sir?
But it is certainly it's a matter of concern around Leyland, the level of violence. As far as my question is concerned, I rise really as a member of St Andrew's Parish Church. And before I ask the question, I better give you a bit of background. St Andrew's has provided Leyland with a cemetery throughout its history, and it essentially is the town cemetery. And anyone of any religious or non-religious hue has had the right to be buried in St Andrew's. Now, I was horrified to hear that St Andrews is now down to 3 remaining plots. So we've only got 3 plots left in St Andrews for burials, and we have no plots available in St Andrews for ashes, for cremation ashes whatsoever. And that means that anyone in Leyland who wishes to be buried after these 3 plots have gone will have to go to Preston or to Chorley, and that means that they will have to pay 2 or 3 times the cost that they are doing currently. I appreciate too that although the number of cremations are going up all the time, that there are still quite a considerable number of people who prefer to be buried, and one item that is of interest here from Harvey's, the local undertakers, is that particularly infant burials are something that is still preferred by families. They prefer to have a burial rather than a cremation, and that's a matter of concern. So my question to the leader, ask first of all if he's aware, as he is now, of the 3 remaining plots, and ask if it's the intention of the council to dedicate any land as a replacement for St Andrew's Cemetery, and if there is no land available, is it the intention of the council to acquire land to provide facilities for burial in Leyland?
Thank you.
Thanks, Derek, and I do quite like your name of Lefty Lawyer. We'll remember that one. This is a really interesting but important question that that Derek raises, and it was quite concerned with the information that you provided us. The local authority hasn't been contacted by the clergy directly, but we have been looking at this for some considerable time, Derek. Just to update you all, there are, as Derek says, there's only 3 burial plots at St Andrew's available. Currently, there's 110 spaces available at St Mary's Roman Catholic Church, and at St James's Anglican Church, there are 13 burial plots available. That's just additional information. You've also clearly, Pemberton Town Council have the Hill Road Cemetery there as well, where my poor mum is laid to rest. The direct answer to your question, Derek, is yes, we are looking at available space for a new cemetery, and Councillor Flannery is looking at it through the local plan process, as you'd expect, so that we can allocate the land. The law is really ambiguous here as well. You've got conflicting law. So under the Local Government Act 72, we're not absolutely statutorily required to do this, but under the Section 46 of the Public Health Control of Diseases Act 1984, we are expected to intervene. The other additional challenge that we face is that whilst the churches run the cemeteries, whilst they're not at capacity, local government, local councils have to take over the safety of the cemeteries once they've reached capacity. And none of this is funded, you'd be surprised to know. So it's an area that we do need to look at. We have identified a potential plot. And as I say, Councillor Flannery will be bringing this forward next year through the local plan. But we will ask the officers, I think it would be important to get all the clergy in from the churches as quickly as possible. And let's see if there's something more we can do quickly. But the numbers are quite stark, aren't they, Derek? But we are on with looking at it. So thank you for the question. And thanks for advance notice as well. Thank you. Information.
Thank you very much for that. We have no more questions from the public that I can see. Nope. In that case, please sit down and relax, Councillor Foster. Right, so questions to Cabinet members. I'll take these in order. Questions to the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Properties, Assets, Commercial Services and Major Developments. Councillor Aniela Belinsky-Gelder, are there any questions? Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So at the last council meeting, I asked the Cabinet member a question concerning the Hope Terrace car park, and I did receive a reply, thank you. And subsequently, a consultation with the businesses on Hope Terrace and the area has been completed. The concerns contained as a result of the consultation reflected the concerns of the businesses I forwarded to this council in July 2023, that the new system and the machine and the only one ticket machine being available was causing damage to the businesses with the restrictions of the Blue Bays and 1 hour's free parking when you now have to provide a ticket. Can I ask the Cabinet member that now that the trial of the current system is almost over for 6 months, and that the concerns of the businesses will be considered as an urgent matter before it's too late, and businesses will have to close, as I've been told that they might have to do, as a result of the current car parking regulations installed on the Holt Terrace car park in Lostock Hall.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for your question, and thanks for your acknowledgement of the reply from the last meeting. I do have a statement regarding what the history is, like you've just suggested, where we are currently, and my timelines are a little bit different to yours. So if I just so the decision to amend the off-street parking places order was agreed by council on the 25th of November 2020 and approved by the executive member, which was Councillor Sue Jones at the time, in November 2021. Unfortunately, there was a delay in installing the machines and implementing the changes to the charges due to supply issues for pay and display machines, and we all know about that, don't we? The policy amended the charges on some pay and display car parks to simplify the charging structure, which you mentioned about the blue lines, and just giving people a free ticket for 1 hour and no return within 3. However, since the last meeting, I have met myself with several members and the actions and discussed some actions which could be progressed quickly and easily, having been completed and are in progress. So, for example, what we've done now is ensure that all the machines are just turned on all the time. So I don't know if you know, but previously you had to walk up to the machine, press a button and wait for the digital display to come on. Because the solar charged, we didn't want to run the batteries out, if you will, but we've enabled it so that they're just turned on all the time. So when you arrive at the machine, you can use it straight away. So that's one of the changes that we've made, just to give you an example. There are also suggestions and actions which came out of the meeting which will have a bearing financially or mean that the wider policy related changes, these will need to be further and fully considered in terms of the impact and cost, because we have to consider that if we make changes to that car park, people from around the borough will come and use it and go, well, we want that on our car park. And so we have to think about the cost to the whole borough. And I think there's 55 car parks. So if we made the same changes to that one as the rest of them, it could be significant. I'm also mindful of introducing changes without properly structured and scheduled review, which is what I've just suggested. It's likely to lead to more confusion for residents and local businesses. So I've therefore suggested a period of 6 months, like you said, from August. Yeah, because although we installed all the equipment, everything wasn't in place until August to allow the changes to become more established. So I would say January is the end of that 6-month period. This will also allow time to assess the responses from the local survey being undertaken by the Hub, which you're also aware of, in respect of Hope Terrace, and enable me time to meet with any members like yourself, if you still want to do that, who wish to do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got no other requests from members of the council. Are there any members of the public? I'm afraid you've used your time up tonight. Not just one more. I want to go home. Okay, so I apologise for that. Right, so we now move on. Questions for Cabinet Member, Finance and Public Protection, Councillor Matthew Tomlinson. Are there any questions? I have one flooded in from Councillor David Howarth. Councillor Howarth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You'll be pleased this is the last one tonight. To thank Councillor Tomlinson for assuring us that we as a council are not in any way likely to go down the road of Birmingham Council, and that our finances are quite sound. However, it hasn't gone unnoticed that our next door neighbours, Chorley, according to Moody's credit rating, are 78 million in debt with a spending which is 5.9 times more than their spending ability. And I appreciate that they are generating an income from the market and from other investments. However, this is a however question. In the event that they did go the same way as Birmingham and we have our shared services, were they to close down their services other than the absolute basics, how would that impact upon us?
Thank you for the interesting one, actually. And of course, we are not anywhere near, nor are we projected to be in the same place as councils like Birmingham or Slough, or that the list of councils that have struggled financially, some of which is because they've made investments to try and generate income as austerity has bitten, and they've overstepped the mark, or they've invested in inappropriate investments that have then not generated the income that they need. We're not in that position. In terms of shared services, I can't comment on Chorley's finances because we are distinct and sovereign councils, as we've always said, despite us working ever more closely on certain parts of the council. And if I'm really honest, I don't know the terms and conditions or the details of it. But now that you've asked the question, I will endeavour to find out.
Thank you for that. I don't think we've got any questions from the public. No, then we move on. Questions for the Cabinet Member, Neighbourhoods and Waste Services, Councillor Deborah Ashton. There are no questions from members of the council and none from the public. So we move on to questions for the Cabinet Member for Customer Services and Digital, Councillor Ian Watson. That's what I said. I said it's the dyslexic tendencies that do that to me. But we have no one wanting to raise a question from council, and there won't be one from the public. Nope. So we move on straight away. Questions for Cabinet Members, Planning, Business Support and Economic Development, James Flannery. I've got a question from Councillor Mary Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Flannery, I know it was slightly referred to a while back in conversation, but I already had this question prepared. There appears to have been a lack of progress in 2023 in the development of the new local plan. I wonder if the portfolio holder could update the council on the reasons for the delay and what steps the administration is putting in place to get this back on track. I do have a supplementary, but I'll let you do that. And then, Mr. Mayor, if I could come back with a supplementary.
If it's relevant, of course.
Thank you, Councillor Green, for your question. Well, first of all, I would just like to say that a project and a development of a programme policy like the local plan is very, very complicated. So it's a joint project between us, Preston and Chorley, as you can appreciate. And I've just making some, actually I didn't anticipate you were asking me that question. I thought there might be a question on it. I'm just looking at some of the issues. So what we're doing is you've got to take into consideration the preferred options consultation, which has happened, the resource issue, which we are allocating between the authorities, the infrastructure levy consultation, which has happened recently, which the government imposed on us, the technical consultation on the environmental outcomes, etc., etc. Whilst you're saying, or your perception is a delay, it's a big body of work and there's a lot of work going on. So there might be some slippage, and some of that slippage has come from, unfortunately, the unhelpful interventions from the government, like of the Pickering's Farm decision, because it really does have an impact on some of our decision making. I would also like to add the car crash of an economic policy last year, which obviously crashed the economy, which what it's done, it's affected the local plan development, because as you can appreciate, I was found some information out only last month that some of the private housing the developers are now ceasing their building programme because they had in this region there was one new inquiry for a new property. So there's a lot of factors which sort of all coming together make a very difficult programme sort of halt a little bit, then accelerate in another way. But unfortunately, the progress in terms of your perception, Councillor Green, is probably not to your satisfaction. But working with the team, the officers and the resources that we've got, we are making steady progress and we are aiming towards our deadline of completing that work. So thanks for your question.
Did you have a supplementary?
Okay. Yeah. What worried me about to raise this question was the fact that we did have part 1 of the consultation, and the intent was to carry out part 2 in mid-23, but obviously, as you're aware, we're almost in October, and it just feels that it's been held up. But I'm sure you will push on as best as you can with that. The supplementary is, according to a report produced for the local plan process, there is a need across central Lancashire for new bungalows, estimated to be up to 20%, depending on their size and tenure. How confident are you that the new local plan, when it is adopted, will lead to the construction of more bungalows across South Ribble in the future?
Thank you, Councillor Green, for your supplementary question. So you're an experienced committee member on planning. What we rely on in terms of our planning and our planning strategy really is you have private sector developers who in general make the applications to build what they need to build. Now we've had, as the chair of our planning committee will obviously, confirm, we've had a long-standing debate about accommodation, the type of accommodation and bungalows and the lack of. And as you've seen and pointed out in the past, there's never enough bungalows for a population which is increasingly getting older. So whilst we would like to see a lot more bungalows in terms of provision for, our elderly population, Councillor Green, unfortunately, the national government at the moment, you can't determine that. We can't determine that. What we have to do is receive the application. And as you know, you spoke many times and spoke well, that you're frustrated, we're all frustrated when you see an application of houses only or apartments only, but never bungalows or never the right amount of bungalows. So in terms of the local plan, we'll keep pushing the agenda, but unfortunately, there's only a limit in terms of how much influence we can have on the provision of a certain type of dwelling. So I appreciate your question and your support on that. And if you want any further information, I'd happily take a meeting outside of the council with Councillor Green. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a question from Councillor Phil Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't really going to ask any questions tonight, but with regard to anything on the agenda, but the local plan is obviously a hot topic this evening. I'd like to ask a couple of questions first on the local plan. They're fairly straightforward, so uncomplicated. First of all, when are we going to see the reformation of the local plan working group? When we had that local plan working group, and we had it for a few years, we all knew what was going on. Information was passed around. We knew exactly what was happening. Well, not exactly. We knew what officers were telling us, and the specialists were telling us, the consultants were telling us, but at least we were regularly informed. I keep asking the question, when are we going to reform this? So at least we're all in the loop. It is such an important document, and probably the most important document that we're going to produce for a long, long time. And the other question on, again, it's fairly straightforward. With regard to the last consultation, when are we going to see some evidence of the particular on the local plan, and see what information is coming back and what the community and the people and everybody else is saying on the consultation that we put out in December? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I always enjoy your questions, so please don't ever feel like you don't have to ask me one, because you always put them in the right way and in the right manner. In terms of the working group, yeah, I understand your question. I think you've asked me once before about the working group. But not publicly, and it's something which I will look at. Okay, well, come back to you on the working group. It's not that we're not trying to disseminate information. There's just a lot of things in the calendar to get done, and if you feel like there's a reinstatement of the working group, I'll consult with officers and we'll consult with colleagues and we'll come back to you on that. We don't want to give you information, Councillor. In terms of the second part of your question, the consultation process, that and the preferred options has gone through. What happens now, Phil? They sort of we go through a fixed position under preferred options, then we go back out for consultation again. So that process is actually going through at the moment. So I think the next meeting on that is about the 3rd or 4th of October. So I'll, after that, if you want to attend that, if you want to meet with me after that, we can have a chat. That's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. We've no more requests from the council, and there won't be one from the public, so we'll move on. Questions for Cabinet Member, Wealth Building, Social Justice, Equalities and Diversity, Councillor Jackie Alty. No, I'm not seeing any questions, nor will there be any from the public, so we will move on. Questions for the Cabinet Member, Communities, Leisure and Wellbeing, Councillor Claire Hunter. Have we got any questions from the council? Nope, not from anyone of the public. So that concludes questions to the Cabinet as far as I can see. In which case, we go to any other business, and I have no urgent items. I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Night night, everybody.
Good night, James.